So this evening, Books and Books, in collaboration with the Department of Architecture at Florida International University, is very happy to welcome Professor Jason R. Chandler, presenting a panel discussion on the first edition of Folio. Professor Chandler is the chair and an associate professor in the Department of Architecture at the College of Architecture and the Arts at Florida International University. He holds the Bachelor of Architecture from Cornell University and the Master of Architecture from the Graduate School of Design at Harvard University. This evening, Professor Chandler is going to be in discussion with Mr. Henry Rueda, Mr. Raul Lira, and Ms. Marnie Pereda, or should I be saying professors? Yes, no? One, okay. All right. So here to introduce our panelists and to host the rest of our program for us, please give a very warm welcome to Professor Jason R. Chandler.
Thank you. Welcome. I'll introduce the panel, but I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and the school. What's important about tonight is that it is really the first publication for the Department of Architecture. But the Department of Architecture, just to give everyone a background, resides in within the School of Architecture, which is composed of a Department of Architecture, a Department of Interior Architecture, and a Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Urban Design. That resides in the College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts at FIU, which is 55,000 strong, an important institution, and I like to think that 55,000 people would be enough for people to know what it is, but it is the majority-minority institution in the country. It is also number one in issuing degrees, STEM degrees, to Hispanics in the country. So it's charged as as the public urban institution in Miami. It is charged with creating access to higher education for its population. So it has an important charge. So just to kind of articulate exactly where we're nestled within that at the university at large. It's very nice to be here at Books and Books, and I think a lot about what being at Books and Books has a lot of resonance in why we did the book. Books and Books, for me, I've been here for 20 years, is an important institution that, in the context of new media, in the context of bookstores closing, the idea that Books and Books double down on being a bookstore in a growing dynamic city like Miami, I think is an important thing. And I think a lot of the ideas behind our own book are reinforced by Books and Books itself as an important institution. And I think the idea that in this space, I think what's interesting about Books and Books is that it is a place of presence, that it is not a kind of generic one of 1,000 bookstores. It's not an online thing. It actually is a place, that the physicality, the people of the place make it a unique institution. And I think in the end, that's that sort of presence of being here in the thing itself is why we still, in spite of new media, we do make books, physical things. Just a couple of thank yous. The dean of the college is not here. He's at a commission meeting for another venture for the department, but I thank him. He's supporting that. I also want to thank Joe Hammond, who is on our audience. Joe, if you can just stand up and say hello. Joe is our printer. He printed the book, so he deserves a round of applause, and thanks. And then just a kind of a quick introduction about the book and the history before we talk about it. I became chair about 3 years ago for the department, and one of the things I wanted to do is, one of the jobs of the chair is to celebrate the work of the school, to get it out there. And I felt very strongly about this because the reality is, without a publication that represents your department, the department does not really exist in the conversation, the national, international conversation, the publication of architecture books. And it's important that FIU be part of that. So this book is really meant to be a kind of celebration of what we do, a mark establishing a place in the world. So this is a big thing for us. Just in the background, this was something as an undergraduate, the making of the book was something that was born out of the students and the faculty. And I'd like to, we'll talk about that exactly how it happened, but this is something that I thought, I wanted to bring, as I became chair to the school. So we rethink that, and the book is meant to be something that really is, in its content, it's reflection of the department, but in its actual making, a reflection of the department. So those are two things. I guess the last thing is just to kind of just talk a little bit more about the department. The department has been in place, I guess, for, I'm going to say, are we almost 20 years old now? We're close to that? 96. 96. So a young school, but I take great pride in the fact that that school in that period of time now has educated architects that are in important positions in the field of architecture in Miami, that these people, and we will continue to do so, are shaping the world of Miami's architecture and shaping the places that we live in, so that's important. This is also a kind of a book, a publication that is parallel to our online presence, so you can visit us. If you Google FIU Architecture, we have a web page, and in that web page you will find eFolio. And eFolio is the kind of nephew or sister to Folio, and that is basically a downloadable PDF. We have 6 of them. We do it every semester. And that is a book, that publication is about new media. It's about immediacy, having that thing done, immediately, right away, quick accessibility. And I think it's a complement. I think, any department, any institution right now has to exist in both, and there's many modalities of media as possible. But ultimately, we are here to talk about the book Folio, the thing, right? This thing that occupies space. So I'm going to introduce Henry first, and he can introduce the team. But Henry Reyruda, who at the end was tasked with editing and organizing that. So I have to take a moment and ask the audience to join me in thanking Henry for spearheading this effort. He is the editor, the workforce behind that. So I thank you, Henry, for making this happen. So I guess we can move into moderation, the panel. So I guess the first thing is, so this is born out of a class. So this really was a class. So we had a Folio class. So the other character who's not here tonight is Alistair Gordon. And Alistair Gordon is an architectural writer and author. And okay. And what was Alistair's contribution is that he was the kind of provocateur. He said, the standard book of architecture of a department is boring. No one will read it. It's uninteresting. What do you do to make it an important book, right? So if it's just about the department, then somehow it will only be for the department. But how does one make this book an important book about architecture, but also about Miami itself? So I guess that's the first thing. And I guess
yeah, I have the mic here. Well, just to introduce, thank you everybody, and just to introduce the rest of the team, Marnie Pereda, who's here by my side. She was one of our students in the MAA program, which is a master's that is basically 3 semesters. Marnie is from Miami, but she was coming from Brooklyn. She was coming from Pratt, and she was like instrumental in putting all this together. And Raulita, who is a graphic designer from Caracas, who was also recently transferred to Miami, and we had collaborated before in Venezuela, and he was here, and I needed some help, and I sort of ran desperately for his sort of professional advice, and so we as a team, and with 2 classes, it was actually 1 class in the spring and 1 class in the summer, a bunch of students and people that really made this possible. So the first class that we had with Alistair in the spring of 2014, it was kind of conceptualizing what this book was all about. We had the input of a lot of the students, and it was actually from, I guess he was coming or he's here, from Nicholas Pendas that it was one of his ideas how to open this book to a wider audience, not to keep it as a book for us in the school and between like friends and family, to sort of bring in some other topics that would be interesting in the city of Miami and that will not are not topics that the other publications will go through as Miami, like this place that it's really flashy and it has like all these investments and movement. And in the school, we talk about other stuff. So why not bring in that other sort of back of the house conversation into a book and into the audience? So that started like shaping ideas for the book. Of course, we have all the students' work, all the graphics, all the studios, research, everything that made the book. But that was sort of an idea that made it into like something bigger for everybody. Because, Marnie, you want to?
Sure. Hi. I think one thing that you said was that this was a representation of Miami. And I think when we were discussing as a class, one thing that we really thought was important was what does FIU bring to Miami? And what do we kind of provide for a city as a whole, and how do we connect? And for a lot of the studios, a lot of the classes, you'll see that we do bring a lot of the issues that we have. We dealt with sea level rise, which is very important in treating how we plan our city, how we design, what is the new typology. So these were all questions that we wanted to introduce, things that were very important at this moment, as well as what Miami's identity was. And for me, coming from New York, I haven't seen Miami change in I wasn't here for about 7 years. So to see what Miami is now has been a drastic change for me. And to kind of define what Miami has become and is becoming and still will, especially when we as students are now going to be becoming architects, and we are going to be able to have, hopefully, we can have a voice and have a say in how our city is designed and changes. And I think that's something that we wanted to highlight for the students and for people outside of the school as well.
Well, yeah. So one of the things that I have to say is important about the department is that the School of Architecture, I think, while we deal with issues that are not necessarily about the place, I think ultimately the fact that we serve Miami, right? We're educating the future architects of this place. We do so with an eye to global issues, to academic an academic history that extends well past the confines of our school. We engage in architectures that are engaged with throughout the world, and our faculty have positions and are leaders in architecture at an international level. But ultimately, I think that the school itself is bound at the city. It finds its dynamic. It is exciting because of the nature of Miami, which is it is both a kind of inspirational place, but also one of great challenge. So while it is like the leading sort of art city, right, with Art Basel, and has the most sort of dynamic sort of art culture in it, has amazing museums, has incredibly talented people coming here. All the most important architects in the world are building significant buildings in Miami. It's also sitting right on the edge of collapsing into the ocean. It is at the mercy of development that is highly speculative. It's a boom-bust economy. So it is an amazing place to have a school of architecture, right here, this kind of mixture of it. And the intent of this book was to explain that condition, that it is not a school that's just kind of sitting by itself. Not that we have a hill to sit on, but not even flat, just sitting by itself in a kind of flat landscape. But we are engaged in the city. So the idea that the book, if it was going to be about the department, it would have to be logically about Miami. So there's what the Miami Matters. You want to talk about Miami Matters?
Yes. So I just want to go a little back just a little bit, and is is the fact that there was a team of people, a group of people in the school that all believed in books, in printed books, and that's like something that happened. I mean, it was Alastair, it was you, it was me, it was like a bunch of people that were not like opposed to the idea of having that physical object, which is the printed book in the end. Yeah, so what we did with Miami Matters, it's only 5 sort of chapters that we have. We sort of took advantage of the people that are coming through Miami. We did interviews. We invited people to do lectures in the schools. We had an event last year that had in one day Alejandro Aravena before the Pritzker. He didn't make it, but he sent his partner. We had Solano Benitez, who just won the Venice Biennale, and they were all here for one day. So Miami Matters somehow took advantage of that situation, and we did interview these people. We also interview like Margie Nothart, who is a local architect, who is the same figure, is someone that works here, and we sort of appreciate her work. And so the idea of Miami Matters is that it brings other voices into the book. We did a great interview with Manuel Clavel Rojo, who is a Spanish architect who works here in Miami and Spain. So it's like this kind of dynamic society that moves around Miami that's always changing. And the idea is that at some point we can, hopefully we're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 folio books. And if you take all these Miami Matters, you will have like a time capsule of events that happens around the city, people that will come here, and it's part of the conversation. Maybe in 10 books from now, sea level rise will not be an issue, or we will be gone, or we don't know, right? So, that's part of the thing. Also, it was interesting. It was kind of it was an idea from Alastair, not to build work into the book. And since this is a student publication, it's basically faculty and students, how do we bring like buildings into the book? So this idea of having these full bleed images that we work so hard for this book with the files and the resolution and all that stuff, to like break the sequence of renderings, sketches, renderings, that at the end they look kind of repetitive, like in the book, and just to have like one building that's built, like something that pops into your eyes and will make you like stop and see and keep you engaged in sort of in the book, right? You want to say something about that experience?
Hello. When you invite me to join me and help you with the project, it was kind of challenging because all the thing that you said has to be in this book, and also how to teach the student all the tricks to build a book. That was crazy because at the end we have all this bunch of files with a lot of problems, and to transform all that in one single file, it was amazing. Yes, Joe's. Sorry. But it was worth it because we have a beautiful book that represent all of Chandler said now, and it's very important because it's the first one. And it was, I think, it's a pretty nice book, and it has all the information that talk about the.
I would say it's a beautiful book.
The next one is going to be better for sure.
But this one, I would say, is an amazing, exquisitely lovely, beautiful book. And I am not biased in any way when I say that about this book. But Raul is the designer, and I have to say, I was in a meeting not too long ago, and I was sketching, to kind of keep my mind active during that meeting. So what I did, I sketched it. I don't know if I showed you, but I basically, what's not, typical books just pivot around one point, right? This book pivots regularly like a book, but then it has the flaps that look backwards, right? So if you have time when you go home this evening and you if you dot out all the radii of the movement of the book, it's really terrific because it pivots like a regular book. It folds out. Those flaps fold all the way out, and you got sort of big. It's a very long book if you lay it all the way out. And it is both a concealing thing, right? The blue hides, so there's nothing to see. You just sort of see blue. You see a little bit of an edge, so you know it's got something, somehow architects were involved, because architects are loath to make, casual alignments, right? The idea that you would want to pull something back, right? So this cover pulls back enough to reveal the name of the university and the department. It also, at the other end, right, the hinge is not at the edge where the pages end. That would be mundane and uninteresting, but pulled back to reveal that, there is this kind of thing. So when I say it's a thing, it's a thing that, content-wise, obviously we were chewing on quite a bit, but I think architects are architects, right? So would the thing itself be a lovely and extraordinary thing? I would certainly hope so. So, and this is to you. I mean, you came up with this amazing format, so I thank you for that. And I've been sort of, contemplating this book, post-rationalizing the existence of this book with great joy. I love doing this kind of thing, but it is a great book, and I think there's something kind of amazing about it. I mean, I do think there's something counterintuitive of having the flap the other way, and the flap isn't really most of the flaps are to kind of mark your page, but we all know that it never works, right? And it ruins the cover. No, it's baloney. So it's like this kind of celebration of the peculiarities in the history of the book. So I think there's something very nice about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the design? I mean, I think
that's important because we spent a long time working on. Well, I just want to mention for one thing, same as this was the identity of FIU. So one thing we spoke about when we started was putting a student's work on the front was really important, but we didn't want to just put one student's work.
Which one?
And how do you choose after having hundreds and thousands of images really that we've gone through? Finding the right one to represent us was very difficult and a challenge in itself.
How did you guys? Yeah, because they came to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I love it," but I don't know how they got to it. But that was.
Yeah, but that was your job. I received the 5, but how it's gonna work inside? I mean, that was a challenge because for render and sketches, how can the eyes doesn't get tired or see all that's repetitive? So that the plan was to make the renders that was more or more finished look. That was your idea and that was your expertise, yeah, because
I mean there was something about that image that I was kind of sure that it was going to make it to the cover. This is Jacqueline Rowe's project from one of the classes, the installation class, and that's like a process model that's in one of the walls in the university. And if you walk through at Emboss in our site, our school in Miami Beach, you will see it every day, and it has like the push pins. It's like a work in progress. It's not like a finished thing. It's like fantastic, just the forms and the shadows that it creates. And we did an early version of this when it was black. Mm-hmm. Remember that was like a black thing, and somehow it was like that was going to make it to the cover.
You married.
And there are decisions like that, I guess, right? And then working with, we visited Joe. We went to the printers a couple of times, and I knew we didn't have a budget to do like a really thick, heavy, solid cover. So I think in the conversation we talk about folding it to create like a more rigid sort of edge, and somehow Raul came up with this idea. One thing that sort of made click in all this group of people, for example, Raul is a designer that will not do like a logo. He sort of believes in typography and the beauty of fonts, and that's something I feel very good about. Like it's like the same kind of line, and I guess the people that were around Folio felt more or less the same. So there was a lot of like synchronicity in this project that that happened. I mean, we interviewed two students. I don't know why we selected Marnie, and she was like the perfect,
Right.
choice for this project. I mean, it was great to work with Marnie. So there was a lot of things that happened just like that. For me, it was also interesting because I was new. I mean, when I started with this, like to dissect the school and see like the whole curriculum, understand like all the names, all the professors. I mean, it took me some time to like figure it out. I guess still have some gaps, but I have a better idea. And then to transmit it to Raul was challenging too, because like, but it was. I mean, it's making a book is something like that. One thing is that for a book like this, and Raul just mentioned it, is too big in terms of the information that we collected. It was like too many different types of files, and that was one of the challenges. Like, we had like the organization of that, collecting all the information, it's one task, but also sort of putting it together was sort of a different one. Because one thing that's really, that I enjoy about FIU and the School of Architecture is that in a kind of a small school of architecture, every professor has like a totally different approach. So every project from every studio will have like totally different results. So it will be completely different, like if it was Jaime's studio or if it was Eric's, and how to put all that together in a sort of cohesive way was kind of a tricky.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, just to speak to the content of the book, there is student work. It is structured in reverse order. So the book begins with the most advanced studio, and as you move through the book, you go down the curriculum. So it's kind of an interesting attitude that it's sort of, you get to see the result of the education, and you kind of move back and understand like sort of what were the steps that got you to there. So we did that very consciously to kind of reverse it. Also to kind of celebrate our outgoing students, as the first part of the book. So there's that. There is also essays about the school and the kind of life of the school. You refer to this model is actually hanging at MBUS, which is our Miami Beach Urban Studio. So John Stewart, who's the director of that studio, has a kind of day in the life at MBUS. We have our Structure and Environmental Technology Lab, which is a brand new facility, and there's a kind of a morning working session about that.
We have events, exhibitions, lectures.
So there is the product of the school, but there is the life of the school. How does one weave that in? We have study abroad programs around the world. Like those things get all put into the book, and it is a diversity of production. Not that just that these are the final products, but so what are the events? What are the experience that the school is having? I mean, I think in a way, the photo of people at work is as interesting if you're in the art of making as the work that they're producing. And I think that kind of like this is a work in progress. So as much as we can show of what goes on in the school and the activity, and I do say it is the smallest snippet of what the life of the school is, but it is a view into the school. But that view is dynamic and diverse, and I'm very happy that it is that way, that it is not a kind of monolithic thing in a way, even though it is elegantly woven together as a single thing. I think you can kind of look at it as a student, you could look at it as a graduate, you could look at it as a practitioner, you could look at it as someone who lives in Miami, you could look at it as someone who's never been here before, and I think that the fact that it has that diversity will allow a lot of people to appreciate the book.
Yeah, but also the diversity of events that happen in the school. For example, we have the Walk on Water, which is an amazing project that Jaime runs like for 25 years now. And it's an event where people walk on a little lake that we have in school. And that we have that next to the Eco Couture event, which is a fashion show where students design garments with recycled objects. And that's also part of the school. That's also part of the university. And we have people that come to lecture. We have like everything. Even for this year, it's bigger because we have like too many events and a lot of people that came through the university. So that's what makes the book sort of a time capsule to keep record of everything that, I mean, we have in files, we have in Google Drive, Dropboxes. It's like we have like every format of filing stuff. But what makes it to the book is at the end what's gonna last, longer, because this is something that, I still see my books from Columbia University from 1993, and I look at the names and it's like, what are we doing here? Who were these people? But it's like something that stays, and that's the beauty of the book in the end. Like it's like the people who, for some reasons, were connected to this project at that specific time. And yes, I mean, a school like ours is so dynamic, and things happen for hours. Like Walk on Water is like, it lasts for 45 minutes, or, as long as the last one reaches the other side, and that's it. It's gone. If you don't go that day, you don't see it, right? So, I mean, the book is the only place where it stays.
Right. So capturing, I mean, it is a fleeting moment. We'll all be gone, and and this will probably also somehow not be around anymore. But the idea that it somehow does have a kind of life past the event is about the thing being there. In addition, there are also faculty essays that, what faculty are doing, what research they're engaged in is included in the book, so you get an eye. And there's actually quite a lot of tech. I mean, there's a lot of images, right? So it's a very visual book, but there's also a lot of writing. So I think there's a nice balance between those two things. So I also think it's, when you revisit something, I think the texts are going to be also something that might have long legs also, because you can see this and say, well, that's an image from 2014, and it kind of looks a little 2014-ish. But ideas will have a tendency to kind of persist past that, and they may not. I guess they could get dated too, but at least it's kind of like, what is the echo of the book past this moment? So I assume even the one that comes right after will be radically different than this one. I mean, from a distant view, they may all clump together as a very consistent thing, but I think right now they seem rather different.
Yeah, one of the other things that is really good about this project is that it builds for the school. Like, we're trying to create a culture of making this book and students to be published in a book. This first one, students and faculty had never seen it before. We only had the printed folios, which were like PDF that you can print on Lulu. And this is a book that it's here in this bookstore. So I guess collecting this new information, people will be more aware of the sort of the reach out of a book like this. Not only students, but we as faculty also. This is a kind of a means of being out in the world. So that creates something that it's already happening when we're collecting info for this book. Students want to sort of redraw some stuff because they know it's going to be in the book. Where before it was like, well, yeah, I sent a PDF and that was it. And now it's like they know it's important to be in the book, and 5 years from now, that's going to be, hopefully, this will take sort of its life, like in other universities where students run these publications, and the culture is already there. Like you do good in your studio, you get selected, and you be published. So that's something we're building up with this book in our school. Also, I mean, essays from faculty or events like Glenda's students who were like published in another magazine in Ecuador. That's something that's coming to the book. So all that stuff that you sort of achieved during 1 year, when we see it now that we're looking at the files for the new one, it's like immense, right? It's like a lot of information. It's a lot of things that happen in just 1 year. It's only 3 semesters, actually like 2.5, because summer it's like a little less. So
can you guys talk a little bit about the class as a student? Because I think this is the first book, so these were the first classes.
Yes,
about
and,
that.
Some students are here. Like I saw Pedro, who was in the summer Folio class.
So was Marnie in the first class?
No, Marnie was she.
I was a graduate assistant.
Yeah, she was a GA.
For the first class.
But she will come to every class, and I mean, the first class was the most challenging one, because how do you teach architecture students to do a book? which is basically graphics, one thing. Architects or architecture students are not that interested in writing. They don't want to write, right? And when they do, they're not the best. Or when we do, we're not the best. So Alastair and I, we came up with this idea of bringing people into the class. Actually, Mitch Kaplan was one of the invited. He came. It was great to have him in our class. He actually mentioned that day something about the cover. Like, you know, if in a bookstore like this, if you have a black cover, that would be great. That will stand up in a bookshelf. Amanda Keeley from Exile Books, who's also part of the class. Amalia Caputo, who is also a photographer and publisher, a friend. I mean, we took the students to other venues, to other places. But mainly the focus of the class was how to classify, file, and archive information for this book, which is not that easy, right? Because of the work, the way it is produced, they create so many different types of files, and that it was very difficult. Also, in the end, they're not designing the book. They're not really making the book, and that was kind of a difficult thing to coordinate with Raul at the same time. But they're putting everything, they're getting everything, they're collecting everything, they're contacting the other students, the professors. And we revised a lot of other publications in class, other book designers. So it was a great class, but in the end, too many hands have to be organized in a certain way to put this together. And this last semester, what we did was totally different. And I think Julian is here, who was part of that class. So it was more critical about writing. They produce ideas for the covers. So it was like what we did was a design phase, sort of a critical writing phase, and archiving phase. So they sort of touch three sides of the book, and they produce, you know, interesting work that's going to be in the new book. But it's challenging how to make a publication with a class and teach a class of 25 students that don't know how to work in InDesign, don't know how to work with graphic design softwares, which is not easy, right? It's like, I'm not familiar with that at all. But Marnie was there at that time. It was really good. And Raul was kind of busy coming in and out and helping with everything. But it's like, it's the same discussion we have with Revit. It's like, how do you teach Revit? Like, how do you teach AutoCAD? Yeah.
So, for one thing that I noticed was when we did have the students attempt to make a layout, they tended to try to make a board like if they were going to present in a class. Yeah. And when you see that, it was a jumble of every single photo that they can fit on the page. And so one thing that we really had to work with them was trying to find not just the right image, but the best images to tell a story in possibly the least amount of content. Choosing maybe one or two versus six. What is the most important? What would get your story furthest? Kind of like a elevator pitch. How do you sell your project without using too many words? And so that was definitely a challenge. And Raul came in and gave them presentations, showed them his work as well. And I think that was really important to them to kind of get out of thinking like an architect and thinking more of a graphic designer, which of course we're not. But it's still always very important to think about how you're going to tell a story. And so that was definitely a challenge with them. And of course we worked with them trying to organize everything. And that in itself was creating a logic to how you're going to move through the book, creating a logic through how everything's going to be organized. So there was a lot of logic involved. But I think coming out of the class, the students did see making a book from a different perspective, and there was a deeper appreciation for it.
I mean, in the context of the school, I mean, the nice parallel moment is that our students, I think almost like coincidentally, because it was the students also make a magazine called Awake. It's entirely independent, and they had come to me right when this was starting. So there was this kind of culture of wanting to publish and be present in, beyond the confines of the department at the university and beyond. So these things were all happening at the same time. I mean, architects are tasked, probably by the end of their education to make a portfolio, right? And that ultimately is a book. And even to get into the department, you're going to have to make a portfolio, which is, I guess, a mini book. So the culture of making books in the school is it permeates almost every kind of moment. From the freshmen do it with the very first drawings they do to become freshmen, or transfers come in with 2 years of design experience. We have people that come into the two-year track and they're more mature, but the idea of that is in the air. And then when they leave, they need to sort of by themselves package their own career at school into their own personal folios. So I think one of the things I think that's interesting is a kind of turn in the kind of the sort of trajectory of publication in the department. I like to think this is the leading edge, but I do think there's a kind of cultural sort of around the school that this is here, and I certainly hope that all the people that were involved in this book have lovely portfolios, right? Because they went through this kind of rigorous moment, but that culture of that, which is essentially an elective class, will hopefully spill out and be something that affects how we represent ourselves as architects, even as students coming out of school. Like, how do you represent that? And it really is a serious undertaking. And I think enough people. We've done the class how many times?
3 times.
3 times. So so it's beginning a culture of that, and I think that will parallel the education, the professional education they have, and I think ultimately will enhance it. So that that kind of thing, and I think ultimately that it is not. A lot of these books, a lot of schools will have. They'll have basically a kind of promotion publication arm that just sort of says, give us everything, we're going to go package it, and we're going to ship it off, and it will be there. But this one is, for any number of reasons, is born out of the people that are in school. And I think there's something nice about that. There are challenges, obviously, about that, but I think there's something interesting about that. That's hopefully we're developing a culture of little bookmakers that will, down the road, be doing that. For their lifetime. So.
Yeah, and the good thing is this is like a 100% full Miami product. Like, we did everything here. We had a publisher that's here. We talk about like printing this outside Miami, and in the end, it was like it didn't make any sense for many reasons. And so I guess that was kind of an interesting thing when we spoke with Amanda Keeley of Exile Books, and sort of her passion to do everything local and to find like people here, and not only sort of the designers and stuff, but the machines, the printing.
You guys went to
we went to
Blue Ocean Press.
Yeah,
right.
And it was far. It was like it was not in Miami, but it's all Miami people, right? So, and that was good. I mean, I think it's great to like have it in this bookstore. It's just like a full Miami product. I think that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, the one thing, a lot of students in the first class and in the last one we just had, some of them took the class thinking that it was a class about making their own portfolios.
Right.
And that was a kind of nice confusion. And I negotiated with some of them, and I helped them with their portfolios, I guess, right. as an exchange for all the work they have to do for Folio. But that was good, and I think a lot of the results. I mean, Pedro, who's here, who's putting up his portfolio because he was finishing school at the same time. Catherine Pajot, like some other people, and it's great. I think that helped a lot. And also, I mean, like as you were saying, in the school we do a lot of books that don't make it to this bookstore, but they, like all the students from Jaime's studio, they present a book for their master projects. When we did D9, we did a book. You do the books with the infill housing. Right. And there are a lot of people involved in that. Like, you have students working on that. So it's not something that new. It's just that this is sort of the most solid project we had done because it involved too many people, and it involved like a real printing experience, where the other is more like web-based printing things. But yes, and I guess it's something that is surprising when you look at everything. Students don't buy that many books because they get PDFs from the web, and they don't accumulate books like this, like in my house or in a lot of other professors' houses. But they do make books, and they do go through like the graphics, the problems, and the sort of the quality of the printed book is something that is very familiar to everybody in the school.
So I guess, any thoughts about the next book? What are the new? There is another book coming, so.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, the first one is basically a learning process. It's tough to like reach everybody, get the confidence of everybody, get everybody involved in the project. I think we got a good final product, a great book. And now it's, I don't want to say it's easier because it's more complex. This last year was like, there were too many events that we have to put in the book. But we have experience on how to get things, how to where to search for the information and how to put it together. The one thing that's going to be more challenging is it can't be like volume 2. It has to have a stronger sort of concept behind it, and that's something we're working on. Because now it's not like another folio. It has to have like its own identity, as Marnie was saying. Like, how do we sort of find the identity of our school and the things that are happening and the sort of the topics we're working on.
Cool. If the audience has any questions about it, we have a couple people here. Any questions? Oh, Andrew.
What are some of the hard-charging topics that you covered in the book that relate to Miami?
You could repeat the question for the benefit
Yeah.
of the internet audience.
Andrew Frey asked what the hard-charging topics in the book.
Yes, we, because during the year, a few events happened. One thing that was really beautiful was the Miami 2100 exhibition here in the Coral Gables Museum. That was Marilis Nepomechi and Marta Canaves and Eric Peterson. That was kind of a hot topic for the book. There is information on the book here. The symposiums we had, like, that were super, not only important for the school, but also for the people that came to the university, that knew everybody in the school, knew the students, knew the quality of the work we do. But also, when we interview Margie Northard, it was about social housing, which is a topic that it's not in any of the magazines or the architecture of the city of Miami. So these were sort of early sort of conversation pieces for the book and for the school also.
Right. I think what's nice about the topics, right? So Sea Level Rise was an event. It was an exhibition. It was a faculty essay. And it was also a studio. So again, the idea that it may be just something bound in the pedagogy and curriculum of the school. It is an actual event, and it's also a research topic of a faculty member. I think is interesting. The housing, Margie is doing, the remarkable housing in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
So affordable housing. We have a infill housing studio, and then I have an essay on infill housing in the book. So there. Because of the sort of multiple sort of venues of presentation here, I don't think that you can read them as exclusive. Mm-hmm. I think the bleed, I think, is interesting, that, what is ostensibly professional work that's outside of school, well, actually, no, it actually has a relationship to the school. Like, I think that's ultimately, I mean, the school is a dynamic thing, and it will exist in many modalities. So I think those, while they're not explicit, I think if you read it, you'll get these different themes that you could kind of pursue and see them through different eyes, through a professional, through a student, through faculty. And I think there's something nice about that.
Yeah, and it will continue. For example, this last year, and in the new book, we will have a chapter on design for the 99, which was an event we had, where we're going to interview some local architects and some architects that we invited to lecture. during that year. We're also going to have the social housing event we had with the exhibition at MCAT. So, I mean, ideally, for the book, we want to talk about things that other publications don't really talk about because they're busy with the sort of glare of the shiny architecture of Miami. We just want to give a space to the other, which are the things we actually talk about in the school. I mean, that's what it's our day every day. It's like a lot of the faculty are involved in a lot, like way more interesting projects than just developing buildings. So.
Any other questions? Oh.
I just wanted to add one thing. For example, we had an interview at the PAM Museum, but the topic wasn't the PAM Museum, which a lot of people might have done. Ours was located there, but what we really spoke about was designing for the location and designing for the place and what maybe a really good piece of architecture could do for the neighborhood and the surrounding area, and how that can probably create change and kind of drive a city. So we didn't speak about the PAM, but it was just designing for the city and how it is.
Any other questions? Yes? Where did the color of the cover come from, Raul?
Actually, I like that color.
It's honest.
That was easy. Yeah, I think the cyan is a really nice color that it looks great with the black combination. That is a formula that I use. And I think for architecture, for that topic, it's a great combination of colors because it's with the black, it gives you a little of light in the whole book. So yeah, that's why.
I guess one more question? Joe?
I have a comment.
Comment.
Okay.
Two new things happened that never happened to me before in doing the printing for you.
Hey, let me give you... Joe is our printer.
Oh my goodness.
I've been in printing for over half a century. And I've done lottery tickets. I've done fragrance encapsulation for Vogue and Mademoiselle. But with this passionate group, I've never had these two experiences. The first one is we have the state-of-the-art digital printer that's longer than this room. And it can do anything. It's amazing. And it's the first time that it ever shut down on your job. It couldn't handle the files. They were so gigantic. It never happened with jobs that were for everyone in the whole world, but for your job, it shut down. But we found out what was wrong. But the other thing is, in all those 50 years, we never did a cover like that, ever. So it's very unique. There was never anything like that. And the passion of your group is incredible, and it was contagious with us, and it was a great job.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if that was a compliment.
Yes, first one.
I know. I think that's a nice way to end. So I guess I know there's official ending. Do you have a couple of comments or?
Just make a couple announcements.
Okay.
Okay, folks, so if there are no more questions, then a note for our internet audience watching at home that there's still time for you to call the number on your screen and we can send Folio to wherever you are in the U.S. free of charge. The shipping's free, not the book itself. For those of you here in the house, we have the book for sale at the counter in the front room over there. They're going to be signing here at the table to the left of the podium. So I want to thank our moderator this evening, Professor Jason R. Chandler. And please give a hand to Henry Rueda, Raul Lira, and Marnie Pereda. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks.